It is with great pleasure to welcome you all to this exciting session. We have some great lineup today. My name is Dr. Boumediene Ramdani. I am an associate professor in entrepreneurship and innovation at the Center for Entrepreneurship here at Qatar University. I will be chairing this session, but I believe that the expertise that I lined up for you today, with all the experience they have, you will be able to understand the high-tech industry in Qatar and possibly be able to explore any opportunities and challenges that exist in this industry. We have, well, I'd like to thank the experts here with me today. We have lined up Mr. Abdullah Al-Misnid from Qatar Free Zone. We have also Mr. Firas Sleiman from PwC. Also, we've got as a panelist, Mr. Audish Shetal from Hyperthink Systems Qatar. I'd like to thank you for being part of this session today. And I believe that we have a number of questions that we would like you to maybe take on. We will be discussing these questions throughout, the meaning of high-tech industry, what are the challenges, the opportunities that exist, how does Qatar compare to the regional hubs here, and so on and so forth. But I would like to remind the attendees that questions will be taken right at the end, if that's possible. If you have any questions, you can flag it up. I will be noting them down and we will answer them right at the end. Without further ado, I again thank my colleagues here and panelists. Thank you so much for accepting to be invited to this session and to contribute to this session. I would like to start this session by definitions, because I am an academic. So I'd like to define what is meant by high tech. And I would like to start with Firas.
Sure, happy to. You're giving me the hard questions, Dr. Ramdani. Thank you for hosting us. To me, high tech is basically the use of technology to improve people's lives. Very simple explanation, if you want. We introduce technologies in everything that the citizens interact with, whether they're working with governments or with the organizations, private companies, and that digitization, if you want, is what we consider high tech from the perspective of this conversation.
Thank you, thank you. What is high tech to you, Audish? What do you think?
Yes, hi, hello everyone. So I think the definition keeps changing. You know, there were times when high tech and technology was an enabler. It used to impact our lives to some basic support. But I think, you know, technology has become more immersive. We live our lives with technology, you know, and then as we live today, there is the advent of AI, there is blockchain. 20 years down the line, where, you know, you might have, you've seen the metaverse. So eventually, you know, technology is, you know, part of what we do, and the definition of high tech is changing. But as Mr. Firas said, yeah, it enhances our life. And then for me, I think it's a part of our life. It's going to be there for a long time. You know, we'll learn to live with technology, with robots, and you know, enhance technology as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I must say I have also Mr. Abdelhadi Al-Sahlawi, who has kindly replaced Mr. Abdullah Al-Misnid. Thank you, Mr. Abdelhadi, and I welcome you on board. Apologies that I didn't mention your name earlier, but we will just carry on as usual. And I would like to ask you the same question. Well, what is a high-tech industry to you?
I think the high-tech industry to me is, to put it simply, something that just makes our daily tasks easier.
Right. I remember having a discussion with you and also Abdullah, who who broadened our definition of high tech a little bit further. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, or?
Of course, Abdullah is also with us. If you'd like to elaborate more after.
Is he there?
Yeah,
Abdullah, do you
Oh,
want
yeah,
to come?
I'm here. I told you I was coming, Doctor. Why late? You have low faith. Low faith.
Okay, please go ahead. Go ahead, Abdullah. Do you wanna maybe tell us what your definition of high tech?
شو احنا we don't need to define high tech. We're business people, or we take care of business people. If they say it's high tech, we say it's high tech.
I understand that fully, but how about this? I think you challenged my definition, so I'd like you to tell the world what is your definition of high tech.
When we look at technology, we look at two things. I just looked it up on Google now as you asked the question. They define it as things which are at the technology frontier, which means things which are, we can define that looking at the amount of uncertainty, the amount of potential development that it has in it. But from our perspective, we come from the development perspective. So for us, anything with the economic development perspective, for anything for us which has a lot of complexity, meaning it requires a lot of know-how, and that know-how is unique in its characteristics, which can then enable other industries and technologies to emerge. For us, we consider this all as if you will, high tech or good tech. We don't need to go on the word. But for us, good technology is technology which requires a lot of special skills and knowledge and know-how, which when it comes into Qatar opens the door for other spillovers and other know-how to emerge. And this could be in a pipe coating, as we discussed earlier, or it could be on the cloud, or it could be where it is, doesn't matter. It's really more about what it is they're doing and that know-how that it takes to do it.
Why I'm asking you, Mr. Abdullah, is this, that with the Audish definition, with Firas definition, we are talking about digitization. But your idea of high tech actually broadens the horizon to go beyond the digital, to biomedical, biodiversity, so it is, and this definition possibly makes it even more interesting, because we're not going to only talk about digitization, but maybe broaden our horizon into other areas. And can you tell us why is that the case? Why is your definition takes on all these areas? Go ahead.
I think what I wanted to kind of touch on is, again, it's looking at where are there spaces for us in which there are interesting things happening in the world, and in which Qatar can play a role, which Qatar has a potential advantage. And I think within the world of digital, there are certainly spaces which are interesting, things which require, and we have some good examples of what we've seen, if you will, AI and things which require very specialized skill sets, very specialized computational skill sets, even access to infrastructure, especially whether it's connectivity or computing power even. But we see the same things and even more in other areas where we're seeing businesses in Qatar also play a role, like for example in the advanced material space, like for example in the bio space. We have some very interesting projects around electric vehicles, advanced charging, which really are just so many interesting opportunities, which are, not all of them are digital in nature, although digital is everywhere now. But and why that's interesting for us specifically is we think that these are areas in which it's harder to compete, and where it's a little bit. There's a lot of more niche offering or more of an advantage which can be taken advantage of. Things which can be shipped on airplanes using Qatar Airways, for example, are more attractive, or Qatar has a stronger advantage there than in other countries, for example. Things which require labs, facilities, research, asset stability, big capital investments. All of these things are areas where Qatar has a certain advantage over other geographies. Digital by itself is really democratic, and really, anybody can do extremely high-tech digital, and that's the whole story of digital, right? anybody can do it. You can do it in the garage, you can do it in high. Well, to an extent that kind of goes against or backfires, or if you will, it's a disadvantage to us because anybody can do it. So, what's our advantage in doing it? But actually, there's some areas where not anybody can do, and maybe we have a stronger hand to play there.
Excellent. I think I got your definition, and it is a broadening definition. And to be honest with you, I think this will take us into even more interesting discussions. Thank you for that, Mr. Abdullah. If I move on to Audish maybe and ask you, who are the key players in this industry? And let's maybe have different levels. Let's look at the key players locally, regionally, and at an international level. But we keep the market in local, as in who are these key players? Audish.
Essentially, we can put the key players in two buckets. You have the large international IT companies, the product firms, likes of Microsoft, Oracle, Cisco, and then the big systems integrators, the Accenture, the Wipro, Infosys of the world. And then you have the startup ecosystem. So you have very localized technology impact building businesses, which a lot of them coming out of incubators here, startups building. So there's a lot of interesting startup activity in the country. So in those two buckets, and if you look at the first bucket of the product and systems integration firms, we have seen just about everyone in the country, and across different spectrums, from IT infrastructure to security, to building data centers to applications, and then now with the Tasmo platform, you have a lot of application providers, coming into the country doing things. So, so that bucket is very universal. So you have also, a localized sales force selling into the country with the big product firms. There are systems integrators, some of them international, bringing their own unique expertise in deploying projects, managing projects, bringing their international experience to Qatar and to the region. And there are localized systems integrators, with their own specific skills, workforce on the ground, ability to, actually give on-the-ground support, as well as, provide localized services, which essentially, built for Qatar. So, those buckets are there. You see all the popular names, and many of them, headquartered regionally, in the UAE. So Qatar being one of the, regional countries being served from a regional hub. But we have seen, you've seen that, with some of the digital hubs coming up, like Qatar Science and Technology Park, now Qatar Free Zone Authority, so the digital hubs are attracting some of these large firms to based here, and then to set up their regional offices and then build here. I think that's the big difference, which can come with build in Qatar and then build products locally and then, take them international. On the other bucket, on the startup bucket specifically, you'll see a lot of new things happening. So you have fintech, you have wallets, so we do a lot of work in the startup ecosystem in the country. We have a large program working with a ministry running one of these startup incubators here. And then we've seen multiple fintech wallets being launched over the last couple of years. So a lot of impact in fintech, you see impact in supply chain, you see impact in multiple diverse, localized technology enabled, and largely coming out of the startup ecosystem. So I think there are a lot of activity, and there's some spillover, from the region, like the likes of Talabat, localized delivery services, the likes of, some of the more popular, other ecosystems. Yes.
I know it gets larger and larger as we go, and I could see you going bigger with the circle. And I fully understand that. Thank you, Audish. You said something very interesting, and that's the hubs. And I'm just going to move to Abdul Hadi. Maybe he can tell us a bit more about Free Zone, right? The Free Zone and what as a hub. Okay, who's coming in? You've brought in some really interesting names. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Also, can you tell us what you're doing for them? How is that going to help the ecosystem in Qatar? Go ahead.
So of course, we're looking at several sectors which can provide their services both to the local market globally and regionally. And we have names from Google, Microsoft in the tech sector to DHL, GWC in the logistics sector, as well as Volkswagen from the automotive sector, and a lot of companies dealing with lithium batteries, such as Inventus Power. We have companies in the medical sector, such as Mats Medical. We're up to above 200 companies now licensed with the free zone. So we have a vast array of companies working in different sectors with us. What we do for them is first offer regulatory regulations that suit businesses first and foremost, with a 20-year tax holiday, 0 import and export duties, 100% foreign ownership. These are the most attractive factors for foreign companies to open in Qatar. And the feedback we've been getting from the majority of the companies that started their operations here in Qatar, like Wasco, for example, Mats Medical, Extraco Medical, is from the first meeting we had with them to the first operational date they had is such a short-term basis compared to them opening onshore. This is because of our regulations. This is because of how we make the process of getting the required permits, getting the required applications done for them to start operations. So when a company comes to us, we ask them what are their target dates for the operations, what are their target dates for construction, and based on the information they give us, we explain to them what we need to focus on for the time being and what we need to focus on in the near future, what checkpoints we need to get done, from building permits to approval from ministries and imports and exports they would need for their manufacturing. We go through the whole process with them, guide them, hold their hands whenever they have whenever they're the experienced parties in that specific process. We would listen to them as well and learn from them to make sure that their transition from an idea that they have to an actual product or an actual service that they offer is not one where the opportunity for the business is missed by the organization.
Thank you, Abdulhadi. It's great insight there. If I move to Abdullah, maybe you can tell us, because if I think about your definition now, the key players are quite different.
Yeah. Cybus, what's the question?
Who are the key players? No.
Oh, who are the key players? So no, I mean, look, the regulatory part, I mean, everything Abdulhadi said about the regulatory part is applies across the board. It's not, the key players are the same, but they want different things from those key players. So, you know, recently we had a recent investor who was doing, I can't give too many of the details, but let's say a very, very advanced alternative food product. And, you know, that guy needs the Ministry of Health, as does, you know, the guy that wants to make ketchup, right? So they both need the Ministry of Health. But what they want from the Ministry of Health is something very, very different. You know, on one end, it's just a food safety inspection. On the other hand, it's, you know, really issuing of a new regulation or approval of a new kind of regulation for a product which hasn't been produced anywhere else in the world, or maybe there's only one other country that does it. So I think what innovation requires, or what high tech requires, it's the same people, but it requires somebody to help guide you through that process, both sides through the process. This is new for the investors, for the technology itself. It's new. They don't know, they may not even know everything they need from the regulator. At the same time, you have a regulator who does not, you know, obviously has never seen this thing before. And so it's how do you get these two guys to understand what the other people, what their, you know, their each other's requirements are, and to kind of process through it. So it's not necessarily that the stakeholders are different, but it's the way they work with each other is very different.
Excellent. Thank you, Abdullah. Firas, are you going to tell us something different?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very different. I think I'll take you on a completely different tangent. I mean, I think the major players in this market or this sector, if you want, are the secret scale players. In my mind, it's not the common people that you see every day. It's you know, the ones that are secretly stealing the market and creating innovation across the board are the ones that are commoditizing services. So I think of, you know, the hyperscalers. So for example, Microsoft and Amazon and Google, they're creating an ecosystem where eventually internet's going to become a plug and play with services, right? Eventually you're going to be able to consume cloud like you are consuming electricity, and computational power will no longer be on your computer. And so innovation will be easy because then you're now not thinking anymore of where does the computer come from. I don't have to buy a device. I don't have to buy a phone. Eventually I just plug into something and it provides me the computing power, the memory, the storage, anything that I need in order to innovate. And so you focus the effort on the actual outcome and the value of what you're trying to do, the innovation, versus looking at the nuts and bolts. What is the infrastructure required for that innovation? So that whoever is going to win, well, probably they'll stay this big trio, maybe with IBM, who's trying to force itself into that market, who's going to commoditize computing, commoditize technology overall. I don't want to say digital, but just technology in general, are the hyperscalers, and those are the ones that are winning. And so I would add to them, for example, you know, the Alibabas, the even the mobile providers like Samsung and Apple, because they're creating devices for you that you don't realize are actually changing your life. So that's why I call them the secret scalers. So they're intruding into your life by a mere fact. And it's no longer that you have to be high tech in a way to have a phone, or high tech to use you know, Amazon. You just use Amazon. So I think this is where the real convergence is on, and the differentiation is on innovation. And so automatically you are inheriting anything that Apple gives you or Tesla gives you. You don't know that this new technology that you're looking at on the phone is a product of a year or 2 or 3 of innovation that is happening at Apple or at Samsung. You just happen to just inherit it. Same thing happens with cloud. You're inheriting services that just exist and they're part of your life, and you feel empowered as a citizen, as a human. You're empowered to start using these new technologies just because they exist. So that commoditization is allowing you to be creative and advance. That's my view on the lead.
Thanks, Firas. Really interesting angle there. But I would say that from an ecosystem perspective, that would be an international standing. What I'm thinking about is more of maybe a local, a regional perspective on this. Are you saying that only the international players are gonna be in this space, or
not at all? Not at all. So I think the international players want to be in this space, and you see this with the relationships now of Microsoft and Google in Qatar. You see it with Amazon's relationship in the UAE and soon in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a lot of push for these hyperscalers to come in. But I will give you another tangent, which I was thinking about in terms of what is happening locally. I think that the likes of Mr. Abdullah and Mr. Abdul Hadi are our, if you want, I mean, looking at it from a consultant point of view, they are our catalysts, because our clients, if they have the ability to think and to innovate within their own practices and structures, and kind of break the mold and think of what's next for every agency, whether it's QFZA or others. And then we deal with a lot of clients here as PwC. I deal with a lot of clients who are at the cutting edge of that innovation. These leaders are challenging us to bring extra technologies or create them here in Qatar. And I think that those would be, in my mind, the disruptors or the change agents, and maybe the entire innovation in Qatar and in the region relies on these people in particular, not on companies.
Thank you very much. I would like to say that we have some of the key players in the panel, right? So yes, Qatar Free Zone is one, PwC is one, even Hyperthink Systems is one. So I'd like to think that you are part of that ecosystem. and you are leading it. Now, moving nicely to the region, Qatar has invested a lot of money on high tech. And speaking to Abdullah earlier, I was staggered at some of the numbers. I was thinking conservatively earlier. So maybe Abdullah, you can tell us a bit more about how Qatar compares to other countries in the region in terms of high tech.
Did I tell you I was going to say that, or I said in the Mabbat Falsafah and don't want to say that? I forget now what we agreed. So look, I mean, Qatar, in terms of, look, I mean, Qatar is a small country, so obviously there's an issue of comparative scale. So Qatar has really good, strong programs, for example, in semiconductors. Probably we have one of the smartest group of people doing semiconductors. Probably, I don't know, but it's probably in MENA. The thing is, though, there's only about 15 of them. So the quality is very high, but it's just not the numbers are still small because ultimately we're small high. So what I think, and in the context especially of entrepreneurs and people thinking about opportunities, is to really think about how to leverage the advantages of Qatar to basically to do business, right? And so I had mentioned before the fact that we have Qatar Airways, and Qatar Airways is, it's every year it's the best, one of the best, if not the best cargo airline in the world. So many people internationally use Qatar Airways as a critical part of their supply chain. The connectivity is amazing to all parts of the world. I mentioned it's quicker or as fast to go from Doha to Bombay as it is to go from Bombay Free Zone to Bombay Airport. It's about 3 hours. It's a 3-hour drive from the Bombay Free Zone to Bombay Airport. It's a 3.5-hour flight from Doha to Bombay. So there are. So if I'm sitting here thinking about business, I'm thinking, okay, how do I leverage all of these things? How do I leverage? I know that the QRDI have a very good Qatar Research and Development Institute have launched or are launching a program to open up the research facilities and equipment for businesses and entities to be able to rent out and use. And that's a lot of tremendous equipment that's all in one city. Like some of this equipment, if you were to go to the States, you'd find like one machine in Ohio, the next one would be in California. So here you have all of them, maybe even in one building. The challenge or the opportunity is, okay, how do I have, we have access to certain things which aren't there. Even if Saudi doesn't have an airline. Yes, they have the market, they have they have a lot of other things going for them, but they don't have an airline. That's the same as Qatar Airways. The UAE, for example, which is another regional competitor, doesn't have this kind of R&D infrastructure or the same level of R&D infrastructure, for example. So so my challenge is, okay, so we're in Qatar, we only have 2 million people, but we have a really great airline. Okay, so how do I use that airline to do business? And can we really compete in an area which requires 30 million people to be available? Conversely, so if I'm doing something which makes more sense in Saudi, will I be able to really compete with the guy in Saudi who's doing it, who's much cheaper, who has not only a bigger market but also a much bigger labor pool? Again, we have a really good semiconductor program, but there's only about 15 of them. There may be more semiconductor engineers in Saudi, even though maybe the quality of the program isn't as good, because again, they have 30 million people. I mean, I don't know if that's the case. It's probably not the case, but in all, the point is, what are we, where are the advantages that we have? Where are our disadvantages? And how do we use those advantages to give us an edge in the business?
Right. If I was to direct the question again, and what are these advantages? I mean, very briefly, what are they?
I think logistically, again, the location, both the airlines, the connectivity, internal connectivity, the connectivity of ports. So there's a strong logistic potential. I think there's still some, I think with the port is still ramping up, given that the land border is still or just recently was reopened. So I think that's one advantage to consider. I think again the access to the R&D infrastructure. You have access to the ability to attract international talent, which is not consistent, in many places. You have a very strong, stable currency, very strong, stable institutional regime, which again is not, is not the. And again, and you always think about. You don't need to think about how do I compare with the rest of the world. You have to think about how do I compare with my target market, right? So it's a common thing where, even if you go to like Ethiopia, which is or maybe not, recently they're going through some issues, but fundamentally, it was a growing economy, and Ethiopia can do some very, very high-tech stuff. They probably couldn't sell it to Germany or Japan, but they could definitely sell it to Uganda or Malawi, for example. And so really, it's again, what are my markets? Where do my advantages allow me to have an edge? And that kind of, and I listed some, and Abdul Hadi maybe has more because he's really engaged more directly with the clients. But this is what we hear from the investors that are coming to us. These are the things that they're interested in about Qatar.
Thank you, Abdullah. Abdul Hadi, would you like to carry on and tell us what these advantages are to your companies?
I can give an example.
Yes, please.
So one of our medical manufacturing companies, his only client actually is in the UK, and his manufacturing was in Bangladesh. And you can imagine the logistical requirements needed to get all those products and keep them at certain requirements and certain specifications to meet the NHS's requirements, all the way from Bangladesh, East Asia to the UK. It's costly, it's not very practical as well. And found an opportunity here in Qatar Free Zone, where he can operate out of the Qatar Free Zone, manufacture in the Qatar Free Zone, find the labor he needs, find the skilled professional he needs to manufacture that facility, put all those together. And it was a perfect situation for him to switch his operations from Bangladesh to Qatar. And it also opened other business opportunities for that company to grow in the Free Zone.
Excellent. Thank you.
One example out of many.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdul Hadi. If I think Hyperthink Systems is possibly the only private company that has a number of offices around the region. Maybe Aldish can bring us some insights into how do you see Qatar compared to the other in the sector, in this specific.
So, so I started Hyperthink way back in 2010 in Qatar, and we grew from Qatar to about 8 countries now with our direct operations. And so in all the effort and all the experience we gained, I think the key thing is we need to recognize every market differently. So if you look at Oman has a very different market base, customer base, and how you operate largely as a technology company and as a systems integrator and in different countries in the region and internationally. So we recognize that yes, there are different tenets to how you go to market from Qatar, and having been there, done that, we recognize that you need to definitely be able to build an international skills force. So you build teams where they are more expensive. We live in a global economy, so supply chains matter, workforces matter. So what we've done on our side, we've built teams in India. We have a back office manager, and we run where people come at a better cost, right? We get those tools, and then we recognize strong partnerships in all these markets as we grow. We recognize the local opportunities, like in Saudi Arabia, we do a lot of smart city work, and we see NEOM, we see now Umrah, we see Red Sea, some of these large smart city opportunities where we are working. Similarly, in the UAE, although a very price competitive market, but being a regional hub, we operate differently. We've signed channel partnerships. We have a reseller network. We sell into Africa from the UAE. So operate differently. Oman has a very different flavor. Omanization is very strong. You can bring in a lot of expat labor. There are different opportunities. So I think the key thing is, if you operate out of the country and if you grow, and you recognize every market differently, and then you build on your strengths in terms of how you source skill, skilled workforce, how you deliver services. And then the key differentiator is, see.
Sorry to cut.
Yes.
I know. Sorry to cut you there, but I just wanted to maybe just pinpoint to us how does Qatar in this sector, how is it different from the other places? You operate regionally, so what is so specific about Qatar?
See, as Abdullah said earlier, we are in a smaller market, so we need to recognize the market dynamics. And so if you're building, I think one of the key things is you build for a larger target access market, which comprises of multiple countries and a larger potential customer base. So that's very key. I mean, you cannot be in Qatar focusing on an enterprise customer base which is very small. And obviously, the economics will never work. So we need to understand how the country works. What are its strengths and what are the opportunities. So if you see there are specific opportunities in the country in areas like we work a lot in the smart city space. There's the Tasmo platform.
Sorry, actually, that would be my next question. Can I stop you there briefly and move to Firas, who will have his say on what is so special about this state of Qatar?
Oh, that's a very a question that we ask ourselves all the time, and we have great answers for it. I think that Qatar is very special. Of course, as you know, PwC operates everywhere. I mean, we're in over 100 countries, and we're now over 340,000 people. So it's a country in its own, if you want, PwC. But we have been investing in Qatar for very specific reasons. One of them, to me, and maybe to the firm in general, is the ability to transform an idea into action, right? And that's because of the rule of law, the way that the structure of the government is, the way the structure of organizations are. The country is nimble. Because it's small, the ability for a conversation that is about disruption, about change, about innovation, for that conversation to resonate all the way up and to get to the leadership, and so the leadership to say, okay, great, this is a great, fantastic idea. It hits our bottom line so we can improve our costs, reduce our costs and improve our operations. Let's do it. From that cycle is usually 6 months to a year. When you compare it in other regional bigger countries, it goes into multiple years. If you compare it into kind of the more advanced world, you get into sometimes nothing actually ever happens. Just because it is so difficult to change a very complex system. So the fact that Qatar has opted to have more of a simple structure, but with a proper governance and proper decision-making lines is great. So that's one element that is moving things very quickly. And of course, it's great for us as consultants because we come up with very innovative ideas and we see them to fruition. The other thing is access to resources. In general, access to people, but also access to budgets. I mean, of course, Qatar with the GDP being fantastic, one of the highest GDPs in the world, I think it's first or second this year, has access to resources. And it's not just about having money, it's about knowing where to invest it. So Sumo Amir, Sheikh Tamim has set up the strategy in the last 5 years to become a knowledge economy. And those words are very specific here, right? It's a shift from being an oil-based economy to being a knowledge economy. So it is a focus on innovation, on advancement of people, of skills, of resources. And we saw that in action in the last 5 years. So the GDP is actually, the funds are being allocated in the right places. So you'll see innovation in every organization. You'll see people and leadership that are saying, I have the budget, let me make a change. And so we see that, and it's fantastic. And then the third element, which I'll add, is Qatar is also very well aware of its size. So even though I think and I don't want to challenge anybody, but the fact that everybody was saying Qatar is small, I think it's different. It's not that Qatar is small in size, but Qatar is aware of its size versus its impact. Whether its impact is scientific through the education push, that has been here for the last 25 years, and R&D, a lot of the work that Qatar Foundation, Qatar University, and other institutes are doing, but also it's access to low-cost power, for example, where you can put a data center here because you put it in next to an LNG power plant, and you have a very low cost of kilowatt per hour. And so nobody in the world can compete with that, right? Because everybody would want to put all of their servers in Qatar because the kilowatt hour data center is costing you much less. And so there's a lot of resources. So Qatar knows, and we work with the top leadership all the time. They know clearly their regional and international role. They know, and they are pushing for it. They want to become a data hub. They want to become an education hub, a healthcare hub, especially a primary and VIP, if you want, healthcare or healthcare.
Right. I think we may have just lost Firas. Firas, are you still there? I'll have to move on. Okay, thank you, Firas. Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask or go back to the idea that Adish was saying around what are the opportunities that possibly for an entrepreneur, startup company, what do you see the opportunities in this industry?
Are you asking me or asking Adish?
It's Adish, sorry. You've got.
Yeah, so for us, because we are largely in the enterprise technology space, so we see a lot of opportunity in oil and gas, in banking, financial services. So I think that's a fairly strong opportunity. You have programs like Tasmo, a lot of buying happening in smart programs, application development, a modern data center being set up in the country. So that's a lot of opportunity. You have the other supply chain in country build program from the oil and gas sector called Tauti. So, driving ICV in the country, value across the country. So I think there are growing opportunities. The consumer space is small. So if you were a startup or a company targeting end consumers, any, let's say, delivery or food or healthcare, I think your target access market should be larger. So if you build, and as Firas said earlier, the opportunity is that this is a very nimble ground or market to experiment. And I think build your MVP, get people to adopt. But I think as a consumer-focused company, you need to be targeting a larger market. So you build, you experiment or test in the country, and then we grow larger. We have startups and companies who've done that. Urban Point, and we have some of the other startups and incubator who've grown from here quickly into many more countries.
Thank you, Adish. Moving on to maybe Mr. Abdullah, can tell us any opportunities that exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the high-level ones, I think Adish really covered quite a good scope. I think to add to that, and more as a general comment, it's I think there's a lot of, and we hope to see more investors coming in and setting up very interesting projects across the board, whether it's in related to oil and gas, whether it's related to some of these new technology areas that we mentioned, the electric space, electric mobility, alternative foods, traditional foods, agro, logistics. So there's a lot of new businesses that are opening and that are looking at opportunities from Qatar that they haven't really thought of before. And my recommendation is these guys will need help. We've even today we saw 3 or 4 very interesting examples just of a company starting up and all of the different things that they would need help in, whether it's from whether it's supply chain, whether it's innovative products, whether it's a localized or customized product. So my recommendation is to go to the I think for us or Adish, you mentioned something about the government leading. The government can't lead innovation. If we can, our job is to keep the government from getting in the way of people doing their business. This is all of the effort that we put is in trying to get them to or to get them to interfere in the right way, let's say. But really, it's for people that want ideas, the most important thing is you need people that are willing and able to look at them, use them, utilize them, test them, and come back to you with feedback. They can do very good procurement. They can do very quick decision making. Who have very, very firm deadlines around products needing to ship, needing to go to market, needing to go to different places. And I think that all of these opportunities will be with the private sector, will be with these new investors, especially the ones that are establishing here for the first time, that haven't yet figured out all of the things, that are still discovering new things. And if I was thinking about a new business or a new startup or new technology, that would really be one of the first areas that I look at.
Thank you very much. Very insightful. Firas, do you want to come back at Abdullah?
No, I unfortunately agree with Abdullah. I think that there's two sides to government in my mind, right? There's the government as an institution and the processes, and I agree there's a lot of maybe push and pull there. So getting out of the way is important, but also there's a lot of innovation in government, and it's the people. And so, but going back maybe to your question on what does it take for entrepreneurs in Qatar, I think. I like to maybe always take things on a tangent. I think that the culture in Qatar is very important for entrepreneurship because in my mind, the general advice that we usually give any startup ideas is to think of angel funding. And angel funding is really your friends and family. It's people that know you, that trust you, that are willing to give you the first $50,000, $100,000 for you to kick off. The great thing about the culture in Qatar, maybe in the Middle East, but also in Qatar greatly, is there's so many people that were immediately warm up to you because of the culture and things and the way that the norms, the social norms are. People make friends easily. People trust you easily. Maybe they shouldn't, but that they do. And I think that's the beauty of our Arab culture. And especially in Qatar, people are willing to say, hey, I have a great idea. I'm not going to be really checking all of your business plan. I think that's a fantastic idea. I'll give you your first 50,000 dirhams or riyals or 100,000 riyals, and let's see where it goes. And they're willing to take that risk. And there's a lot of those. There's a lot of people that are in incubators, that are in Cubic or others, or Bidaya or other centers. There's a lot of people that are in universities. There's your university, in Qatar University, in Qatar Foundation, and others. And then there's friends and the people at work that you become friends with, and they become like your family so easily. And you can easily go to them and say, hey, I'm starting up. Do you want to join? Be my angel investor, and they'll do it. So I think there's a lot of power in exploiting the culture in that positive way.
Well, what about if from your perspective, you've been here for a while, you understand the place, you've got insights into this high-tech sector. If I was to put my money somewhere or start a new business as an entrepreneur, what are the key opportunities in terms of things that I could plug into, things that what would that be?
It's a difficult question to answer. I guess it depends. Maybe there's two areas. If you wanted to do something local, then I would say the focus should be on services, and especially services around events. And I would say the strategy for Qatar, right? The strategy for Qatar has pillars to it. And so healthcare is a big push. The betterment of services for the government for the sake of people and the citizens, the residents here is another. Events like what the Supreme Committee is doing with FIFA, now with the FIFA Arab Cup coming next month, and then next year the FIFA World Cup, and a whole long list of events. Anything that you can do to improve these events or to provide services to these events will be a great opportunity. And it's kind of a natural thing. You're going to have around anywhere between 1.2 to 1.8 million people coming in next year to Qatar because of the FIFA World Cup. And these are numbers just from our discussions with SCDL, with the Supreme Committee. So that's a massive number. That's hyperscale at the micro scale, if you want. You can, a lot of startups should think of that. But for the regional part, so that's kind of the local. For the regional part, I would say you should ride the waves that Qatar is going through. So I think Qatar is definitely focused on cloud. And you can see it clearly in all the investments that are happening right now. Data and analytics is the next push. So I think anything that is related to data in the next 10 years is going to be a gold mine. And we saw that wave in Europe and the US. I was just in the US for the last 6 years, and the data has become the focus of everyone. That monetization of data, using data for improvement of services. So I would say data in cloud and cybersecurity. I think cybersecurity is very important after maybe the unfortunate events in the last 4 years, and in the regional politics, if you want. Cyber is very important to everyone here in the region, and there's so much spend and so many opportunities in that space. So I would pick these three.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Firas. That's very comprehensive. I would like to move to Mr. Abdul Hadi. Maybe he would tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the challenges that some of these companies in the high-tech sector, when they come to the Qatar as a region, what are some of these challenges, and what do you do for them to ease those challenges?
I mean, the main challenge we've already mentioned is getting all these government authorities to understand what we're trying to do here, to understand the end goal, to understand the product itself, or to understand the service that they're trying to produce. And like Abdullah mentioned earlier, in some instances, there isn't a process in place for such new technology or such new service. There isn't a process in place to get it approved or to get it authorized to be distributed in Doha and outside of Doha. So from me as operations perspective, that's the major obstacle we have to go through whenever we get a company that's looking to bring in some disruptive technology into Doha and into the region.
If I was to say, okay, what are you doing to ease those challenges? I mean, I know your function and what you do, but can you maybe help some of the entrepreneurs to understand what you guys are doing, so that they can maybe think about bringing a new investor? I don't know.
Thankfully, we have good relationships with all the ministries. So the first part is sitting down and having a discussion with them and trying to get them to understand what the end goal here is for us and what we want to get to, and how this isn't just something that would help the free zone. This isn't just something that would help the investor that's coming in. This is something that would help the country and the region as well. So the main point is education here, educating the ministries and educating as well the people, the consumer.
Thank you very much for that. Really good. Aldish, what do you think are the challenges that people face here in the high-tech industry?
If you're a startup entrepreneur or if you're an SME, I think one of the fundamental problems I've seen is the lack of SME finance in the country, has been a big roadblock. I know there are initiatives from QDB and there are other initiatives, but still, I think banking norms have been very stringent. There's no easy financing available, and I'm telling from real experience working with banks and financial institutions. So I think that's a big roadblock. Skills, and access to highly experienced people and manpower is also difficult. So we live in a global economy, and then you compete with global companies, and then these companies, they produce in China, India, where workforce is more available. So in those scenarios, I think skill development locally has to be a big issue, especially in high-tech. So those are key challenges. And then the fundamentals, of accessing bigger markets, Qatar as a hub, going out and selling in multiple countries. So I think the fundamentals of business don't change. You need numbers, you need transactions, you need revenue. Eventually, we successful as a.
Thank you, Aldish. I'm just aware of time now, and I have one final question. If I am an entrepreneur and I would like to invest in this sector, what would be your advice to me? I'll start with Firas, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the advice is two things: start small and focus on quality, right? So start small to me is, not, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, and I actually personally mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was part of multiple incubators here in Qatar and in the world. I see a lot of entrepreneurs that have a great idea and they think that they can build it just at the full idea from the start. They start with that big objective and that agility, just going agile and starting with something very small, testing the market and reacting and changing their objectives as they go. I don't see that a lot. I see people attached to their idea. So not be attached to your final idea, but start small and iterate is very important. That's one side. The other side is focus on quality. I think I see a lot of people reducing their costs, for example, by cutting down on quality. So they'll hire, for example, the wrong staff, the wrong technical people, the wrong engineers, the wrong product managers, the wrong people, just because they can't afford it. And of course, it's important to be agile from a budgeting perspective, but also compromising on quality makes you lose that edge. And so when you're eventually sitting in front of a VC and trying to show what you've done so far in order to ask for that first round, your quality is going to kill you. And I see a lot of ideas get shattered because of that. So I would say these are the two areas.
Thank you, Firas. Thank you.